Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. Ceiling, fan in his home office, its rhythmic motion doing nothing to calm the storm raging inside him. At 43, he had built everything from nothing. A successful security consulting firm, a sprawling house in Atlanta's prestigious Buckhead neighborhood, and what he had once believed was a loving family. That illusion had shattered exactly 36 days. Eiga, the camera system he'd installed throughout the property, a professional habit from his 15 years in private security after leaving the Marines, had caught his wife Marissa in the pool house with Martin Walsh, their 19-year-old son's lacrosse coach from Riverside Preparatory Academy. The same coach Graham had personally thanked at numerous team dinners hosted in this very home. The same man who had shaken his hand and accepted his generosity. What hurt worse was discovering his son Evan's involvement. The boy had known for months, had covered for his mother, had lied directly to Damon's face. The ultimate betrayal. From the child he'd taught to throw a football, the boy whose college fund Graham had been filling since before he could walk. "Mr. Holloway," his assistant's voice broke through the intercom. "Yes, Rita." His voice remained steady, despite the turmoil beneath. "The investigator is here. Send him in." Jared Russo entered with a manila envelope tucked under his arm. A former FBI agent with a reputation for discretion, Jared had worked with Graham on several corporate security cases. "I have everything you asked for," Jared said, placing the envelope on the desk. Graham opened it and methodically examined each document, photograph, and transcript. The evidence was irrefutable. Marissa and Walsh's affair had been going on for nearly 8 months. There were hotel receipts, text message transcripts, and photos taken at a cabin in the Smoky Mountains. But more damning were the recordings from Evan's phone. Conversations between mother and son discussing how to keep Graham in the dark. "You're certain the audio recordings will hold up?" Graham asked. "Georgia is a one-party consent state," Jared said. "Your son voluntarily recorded them. Even if he didn't know what they'd be used for, they'll be admissible." Graham nodded, his expression betraying nothing of the calculated fury building within him. "And the other matter?" Jared slid another document across the desk. "Walsh has a history. 2 prior schools, 2 similar situations with married women, both hushed up with settlements. I've traced the money." "Perfect." Graham tapped his fingers against the mahogany desk. "That will be all for now." After Jared left, Graham pulled up the security app on his phone and watched the archived footage of Marissa and Evan talking in the kitchen 3 weeks ago. "Dad would destroy us both if he knew," Evan had said, looking nervously over his shoulder. Marissa had laughed, casual and dismissive. "Your father is completely oblivious. Besides, he's always worked too much to notice what's happening in his own house. That's why we're here in the first place." The words had cut through Graham like a serrated blade when he first heard them. Now they only hardened his resolve. He picked up his phone and dialed his attorney, Miles. "It's time. File everything tomorrow morning." "Are you sure you want to go this route, Damon? It's scorched earth. No coming back." "Good," Graham replied coldly. "I don't want there to be anything left to come back to." Chapter 2. The Opening Gambit. The divorce papers struck like lightning on a clear day. Marissa received them. At her yoga studio, served publicly in front of the class she taught 3 mornings a week. By noon, Graham had frozen all joint accounts, changed the locks on the house, and had a security team remove her belongings to a storage unit across town. Martin Walsh was terminated from Riverside Prep by the end of the school day, the headmaster ashen-faced after Damon's private meeting. The coach's past indiscretions had remained sealed until now. But Graham had ways of making information surface when needed. Evan returned from lacrosse practice to find his father sitting calmly in the kitchen. "Where's Mom?" he asked, his athletic bag dropping to the floor. "Your mother no longer lives here," Graham replied evenly, sliding a phone across the granite countertop. "And I believe this belongs to you." The color drained from Evan's face. You went through my phone? No. You left your cloud account logged in on the home computer. Sloppy. Damon's eyes were flint. You have 30 minutes to pack what you absolutely need. Your mother is staying at the Waverly Hotel downtown. I suggest you join her. Dad, I can explain. 29 minutes now. Graham watched him passively as his son scrambled upstairs. The boy's panic was palpable, but it stirred nothing in Graham. Where his heart should have been, there was only calculated purpose. When Harold, Marissa's father, called that evening, Graham answered with clinical detachment. You've lost your damn mind, Holloway, the older man growled. Marissa's hysterical. You've humiliated her, thrown out your own son. Harold was cut off. Your daughter has been sleeping with my son's lacrosse coach for 8 months. Evan knew and helped cover it up. I have video evidence, audio recordings, and hotel receipts. Now, unless you want those details to become public knowledge at your country club, I suggest you reconsider your position. The silence on the other end was satisfying. What do you want? Harold finally asked, his bluster deflated. I want what's mine, and I want them to lose everything else. Graham hung up without waiting for a response. That night, alone in the house that had once held his family, Graham reviewed his plan. The initial shock was merely the foundation. Tomorrow would begin the systematic dismantling of Marissa's world. Walsh's reputation and Evan's future betrayal had consequences, and Graham Stratton believed in paying debts in full. They think they know me, he murmured to the empty room. They have no idea what I'm capable of. Chapter 3. Collateral Damage. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled with remarkable speed, a benefit of having the family court judge as a former client, whose home security system Graham had personally installed after a break-in. Judge Catherine Landry maintained her professional demeanor, but her subtle nod to Graham spoke volumes. Marissa arrived with her attorney Charlotte Brennan, a shark and Louboutin-wearing powerhouse known for gutting husbands in high-profile divorces. Evan sat behind them, refusing to meet Damon's gaze. Your Honor, Charlotte began. Mr. Holloway's actions constitute extreme emotional abuse. He's vindictively cut off my client from her home and financial resources without warning. Damon's attorney, Miles Grant, a silver-haired veteran of Atlanta's most vicious legal battles, stood unhurriedly. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Holloway has been engaged in an extramarital affair with a teacher at their son's school, creating an unhealthy environment for the minor child. Judge Landry's expression remained neutral. Do you have documentation of these allegations? We do, Your Honor. Extensive documentation. When the evidence was presented, photographs, text messages, and finally the audio recordings, from Evan's phone, the courtroom fell silent. Marissa's face contorted in shock as her son's voice filled the room, discussing how they would continue deceiving Graham. He's been violent and dangerous, Marissa testified desperately when her turn came. He installed cameras everywhere. He's been stalking and monitoring us. That's why I needed to get away. Evan nodded vigorously from his seat, backing up his mother's fabrications. Mr. Holloway, Judge Landry asked, do you have questions for the witness? Graham rose slowly, a predator confident in his timing. Just one, he replied, holding up his son's phone. Shall I play last Tuesday's conversation with your mother? Evan's eyes widened. The court reporter gasped as the audio began. Mom, I can't keep lying for you, Evan's voice said clearly. Dad's never done anything wrong. He works his ass off for us. Stop being dramatic, Marisane's dismissive voice replied. Your father's too, busy with his precious company to care what we do. Besides, Ben makes me happy. Once the divorce is final, I'll get half of everything. We'll be set. But what if Dad finds out we're lying about him being aggressive? That's serious, Mom. He won't trust me. Men like your father fold when their reputation is threatened. We just need to stick to our story. The recording ended. The courtroom remained silent. Your Honor, Graham said calmly, I have never raised a hand to my wife or son. I have never threatened them. The only thing I'm guilty of is trusting people who were systematically betraying me. Judge Landry's gaze hardened as she looked at Marissa and Evan. This court does not look kindly on false accusations of domestic violence. They diminish the suffering of actual victims and abuse the court's resources. By the hearing's end, Graham had obtained full control of the family home, temporary custody of all assets pending final divorce proceedings, and a restraining order against Martin Walsh, preventing him from contacting either Graham or Evan. Outside, the courthouse. Marissane grabbed Damon's arm. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "This isn't over." Damon looked at her hand until she released him. "You're right about one thing," he said quietly. "This is just beginning." Chapter 4. Calculated. Moves. 2 months after the custody hearing, Graham sat in his office reviewing the latest reports from his investigators. Marissane had moved in with Martin Walsh in his modest apartment near the university, where he'd managed to secure a position as an assistant fitness coordinator, a significant step down from his coaching career. Financial pressure was mounting. Harold had provided some support initially, but had withdrawn after Graham sent him the complete dossier on his daughter's activities. Evan had been forced to transfer to a public school for his senior year after Riverside Prep revoked his scholarship. Another consequence of Walsh's termination. The boy's college prospects were dimming with each passing week. "Mr. Holloway," Rita's voice came through the intercom. "Miss Vallis is here." Graham straightened his tie. "Send her in, Mariana Vallis." Entered with purposeful strides. As the lead journalist for Atlanta's most read investigative news site, she had built her reputation on exposing hypocrisies among the city's elite. "You have 15 minutes, Graham said, motioning to the chair across from him. Mariana smiled. "I appreciate you seeing me. Your ex-wife's allegations against you have gained traction in certain circles, I'm aware." Marissane had begun telling anyone who would listen that Graham had manipulated evidence and bullied her and Evan out of their home. "I'm working on a piece about false accusations in divorce proceedings," Mariana continued, "and their devastating impact on reputations, careers, families." Graham studied her. "And how does my situation fit into your story?" "That depends on what you're willing to share." She placed a digital recorder on the desk. "Off the record first. I've heard rumors about Marissa Holloway and Martin Walsh. Something about a pattern." Graham leaned back, considering his options. Mariana Vallis was not known for her mercy, but her integrity was unquestioned. If she published something, it would be verified and damning. "On the record," he finally said, tapping the recorder, "I have documentation proving my ex-wife and her boyfriend conspired to falsely accuse me of domestic violence. I also have evidence that Mr. Walsh has a history of inappropriate relationships with married women at educational institutions. I've shared this information with relevant authorities and your son. Sources say he's living with his mother in Walsh now." A flicker of something, perhaps pain, crossed Damon's face before vanishing. "My son made his choice." After Mariana left, Graham called Jared. "Is everything in place for tomorrow?" "Yes. The trustees will receive the financial records at 9 a.m. By noon, Harold Whitmore will have a lot of explaining to do." "Good. And the other matter?" "Surveillance confirms Walsh has been meeting with another married woman from the university. Photos are uploaded to your secure server." Graham smiled thinly. "Perfect timing." The next day, Harold Whitmore faced an emergency board meeting at the Whitmore Foundation, the charitable organization that had burnished the family's reputation. For 3 generations, anonymous documents had revealed systematic misappropriation of funds, not by Harold, but by the foundation's treasurer, who happened to be Marissane's younger brother, Neil. By evening, both Harold and Neil were forced to resign from the foundation. The family name, once synonymous with Atlanta philanthropy, was now tainted by financial scandal. The fact that Damon's security firm had conducted the foundation's last security audit, which had mysteriously failed to uncover these irregularities, was a connection few made immediately. Meanwhile, Mariana's article appeared online, Pattern of Predation. The disturbing history of Martin Walsh complete, with testimonials from former students and parents. The piece stopped short of outright accusations, but raised devastating questions about Walsh's character and professional ethics. When Marisane called, screaming about ruined lives and vendettas, Graham listened in silence. "Are you finished?" he asked when she finally paused for breath. "You think you've won?" she spat. "But Evan will never forgive you for this. Never." "I'm not looking for forgiveness," Damon replied. "Tell Neil he might want to consult an attorney. The foundation is filing criminal charges tomorrow." As he hung up, Graham opened his laptop to an email from Judge Landry. "Thought you should see this before it becomes public." Attached was a formal complaint Marissa had filed against the judge, alleging bias and improper conduct. Graham smiled. Another predictable move on the chessboard. Another opportunity to spring his carefully laid traps. Chapter 5. The Fulcrum. The divorce proceedings had reached a critical phase. Damon's forensic accountants had uncovered offshore accounts Marisane had established 3 years earlier, siphoning small amounts from their joint finances. Not enough to be immediately noticeable, but totaling over $200,000. Simultaneously, Martin Walsh was fighting his own battle. The university had opened an investigation following Mariana's article, and 2 female students had come forward with complaints about inappropriate behavior. Evan, caught in the crossfire, had reached out to Graham for the first time in months. The text was brief. "Can we talk?" Graham considered ignoring it. The boy had made his choice, standing with his mother even after her lies were exposed, but strategy demanded flexibility, and Evan might provide useful information. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. Evan arrived looking thinner, the confident swagger replaced by hunched shoulders and darting eyes. "You look terrible," Graham observed, pushing a cup across the table. "Yeah, well," Evan stared at the coffee. "Things aren't great." "I imagine not." Silence stretched between them until Evan finally spoke. "Mom's not doing well. Ben lost his job. At the university, we had to move to a smaller apartment." "That sounds like a consequence of their actions." Evan's eyes flashed with momentary anger. "You've destroyed everyone around you. Grandpa's reputation, Uncle Neil facing charges, Mom's savings gone." "Your mother stole that money," Damon interrupted coldly. "From our family, from you. As for your grandfather and uncle, they made their choices long before I exposed them. What do you want? Why won't you just let it go?" Graham studied his son's face, Marisane's delicate features with his own gray eyes. Once, he would have done anything for this boy. Now he felt nothing but cold assessment. "I want what was taken from me," Graham said simply. "My reputation, my dignity, my family. We can still be a family?" "No." The word fell like a guillotine. "That's not possible anymore." Evan's face crumpled. "She says, you'll take everything. That will have nothing left. She's finally telling you the truth about something." Graham stood, leaving his coffee untouched. "You should ask her what she planned to do with the money she was hiding. Ask her if it was enough to start over with Walsh somewhere else, without you." He left Evan sitting there, confusion and fear battling across his young face. As Graham walked to his car, his phone buzzed with a text from Jared. Walsh made contact with Miller. Meeting set for tomorrow. Graham smiled. Victor Miller was Harold, Whitmore's attorney and another of Damon's former clients. The desperation move he'd been waiting for had finally materialized. That evening, Graham reviewed the latest surveillance. Marisane had visited her father 3 times in the past week. Walsh had made calls to former colleagues at Riverside Prep. They were scrambling, looking for leverage, for escape routes. His phone rang. "Miles Grant, they've made an offer," his attorney said without preamble. "Marissa will drop all allegations, agree to minimal spousal support, and give you complete control of the business interests if you'll settle for an even split of personal assets." "No." "Graham, this is actually reasonable." "They don't deserve reasonable," Graham interrupted. "Tell them I want it all, or we continue to trial." Miles, this vendetta, it won't bring you peace. I'm not looking for peace. Graham ended the call and turned back to his work. The next phase required perfect timing. Victor Miller would inform Harold of Walsh's approach. Harold, desperate to salvage family honor, would offer Walsh money to disappear. Walsh, seeing his opportunity, would take the money and abandon Marissa, proving Damon's assessment of his character correct. Marissa, betrayed as she had betrayed, would finally understand what Graham had felt, and Evan would learn that loyalty was not an abstract concept, but the foundation of everything worthwhile. The pieces were in position. All Graham had to do was wait. Chapter 6. Fracture Points. Martin. Walsh never showed for his meeting with Victor Miller. Instead, he emptied his bank account, packed a single bag, and disappeared, leaving behind a brief note for Marissa. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. The betrayal broke something in Marissa that all of Damon's calculated moves had not. When she arrived at the mediation session the following week, the Polish and defiance had vanished. She looked hollow, diminished. Graham watched her from across the conference room table, feeling neither satisfaction nor pity, only the cold certainty that justice was unfolding exactly as it should. My client is prepared to accept Mr. Holloway's terms, Charlotte Brennan announced, her usual aggressive tone subdued. Full financial disclosure, relinquishment of all claims to business assets, and minimal spousal support. Miles raised an eyebrow at Graham, who nodded once. There is one additional condition, Graham said, sliding a document across the table. A public statement acknowledging the false allegations against me. Charlotte began to object, but Marisanne placed a hand on her attorney's arm. It's fine, I'll sign it. Fine, I'll sign it. Fine. After the papers were signed and the attorneys had departed, Graham and Marisanne found themselves alone in the conference room. Was it worth it? She asked, her voice barely audible. Destroying everything we built? I didn't destroy anything, Graham replied evenly. You and Evan did that. I merely ensured there were consequences. Ben's gone. My family's reputation is ruined. Are you satisfied now? Damon gathered his documents. Walsh leaving was never part of my plan. That was his choice. Proof of exactly the kind of man you betrayed your family for. What about Evan? He's still your son. Something flashed in Damon's eyes, the first genuine emotion he'd shown in months. Is he a son who lies to his father, who helps conceal his mother's infidelity? Who stands by while false accusations are made? That's not the son I raised. He's just a kid who got caught between his parents. He's 18, old enough to know right from wrong. Graham moved toward the door, old enough to face consequences. That evening, Evan appeared at the house using his old key. He found Graham in the kitchen. Mom told me what happened, Evan said, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. About Ben leaving. Did she tell you he took the money your grandfather offered him? Evan's face registered shock. Grandpa paid him to leave. $50,000, Graham continued, preparing his dinner, not looking up. Your grandfather thought he could solve the problem by removing Walsh from the equation. Walsh proved him right about one thing. He was never interested in anything but what he could take. I didn't know. Evan stepped further into the kitchen. Can I come home? The knife in Damon's hand stilled momentarily before resuming its rhythmic chopping. This isn't your home anymore. Dad, please, I made a mistake. I know that now. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or failing a test, Graham said, his voice terrifyingly calm. What you did was a choice. A series of choices made day after day for months. I'll do anything to make it right. Graham finally looked up, his eyes cold. There is nothing to make right. There is only moving forward with the understanding that actions have permanent consequences. So that's it? You're just cutting me off completely? I've arranged for your tuition at State to be covered. You'll have a modest allowance for living expenses, Graham returned to his preparation. Beyond that, you're on your own. Consider it a valuable life lesson. Evan stood frozen, the reality of his father's implacability finally sinking in. You don't mean that. You can't just stop loving your own son. I stopped when you helped destroy our family." Damon's words were delivered, without heat, making them all the more final. "Now leave. Your key won't work after tonight." After Evan left, Graham sat alone at the kitchen island, meal forgotten. The house echoed with emptiness, but he felt no urge to fill it with new relationships or meaningless distractions. This was the price of his retribution, a solitary existence defined by the absence of those who had betrayed him. He pulled out his phone and dialed Jared. "It's done," he said simply. "Close all the surveillance operations." "We're finished." "Are you sure?" Jared asked. "There's still the matter of Harold's." "No, it's enough." For the first time since discovering the betrayal, Graham felt the weight of exhaustion. "Send me the final bill." That night, he slept dreamlessly, wrapped in the cold comfort of victory. Chapter 7. Echoes and Consequences. 3 years passed. Graham expanded his security firm into 3 additional states, becoming the premier provider for high-net-worth individuals and corporations requiring discreet protection. His personal life remained exactly that, personal and solitary, with relationships that never progressed beyond casual companionship. The Whitmore family had never recovered from the scandal. Harold had retired from public life entirely. Neil had avoided criminal charges through a plea deal, but was effectively unemployable in financial circles. Marisane had found work as an administrative assistant at a small law firm, a humbling position for a woman who had once managed charity galas for Atlanta's elite. Graham kept tabs on them, not out of lingering anger, but from the same methodical thoroughness that characterized everything he did. Information was power, and he never intended to be blindsided again. On a rain-slicked Tuesday in October, Damon's assistant buzzed his office. "Mr. Holloway, there's a Logan Walsh here to see you. No appointment." Graham stilt Logan Walsh, Martin Walsh's son from his first marriage, a young man Graham had never met. "Send him in." Logan Walsh was 22, with his father's athletic build, but none of his easy charm. He stood awkwardly just inside the door, rainwater dripping from his jacket. "Mr. Holloway, thank you for seeing me." Graham gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you, Mr. Walsh?" "It's about my father." Logan swallowed hard. "He's dead. Car accident in Colorado last month." Damon's expression remained neutral. "I'm sorry for your loss." "No, you're not." Logan's voice hardened. "But that's not why I'm here. Before he died, he left me a letter explaining everything that happened with your family. He also left me this." Logan placed a flash drive on Damon's desk. "What is this?" "Everything. Recordings of conversations between my father and your ex-wife, planning how to manipulate your son against you. Documentation of the money he took from your father-in-law." And Logan hesitated. "Evidence that your son knew the allegations against you were false from the beginning, not just later." Graham stared at the flash drive. "Why give me this now?" "Because my father was a selfish, manipulative man who destroyed every relationship he ever had, including ours." Logan's eyes were hard. "I spent years hating him for abandoning my mother and me. Then I spent years trying to win his approval. By the time I understood who he really was, it was too late. That doesn't explain why you're here. I don't want his poison spreading anymore." Logan stood. "What you do with that information is your business. I just wanted you to know the full truth." After Logan left, Damon plugged in the flash drive. For hours, he listened to conversations that confirmed his worst suspicions and revealed new depths to the betrayal. Marissa had been the initiator, approaching Walsh with clear intent. Evan had not been a reluctant participant, but an eager conspirator, recording conversations with Graham that could be edited to support their narrative. Most disturbing were the discussions of Damon's business plans, to use divorce proceedings to force him to sell his company, with Walsh positioned to broker deals with competitors using inside information. When Graham finally closed his laptop, night had fallen. He felt no satisfaction, no vindication, only a cold certainty that his instincts had been correct. The betrayal had been even more calculated than he'd suspected. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Did Logan find you, Evan?" Graham stared at the message. His son had made no attempt to contact him in 3 years. Now this cryptic question. "Yes," he replied simply. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Finally, "We need to talk. It's important." Graham considered ignoring the message. What could possibly remain to be said between them? But curiosity, the same methodical need to gather all available information, won out. "My office tomorrow, 10:01 a.m. The response came immediately. "I'll be there." Chapter 8. Revelations. Evan arrived punctually, dressed in the uniform of a law clerk. Pressed shirt, conservative tie, inexpensive but neat suit. He had grown into his features, looking more like Graham than Marissa now. "You're working at a law firm," Graham observed, not offering to shake hands. "Winters and Associates. I clerked during the day, take classes at night." Graham gestured to a chair. "What was so important?" Evan sat, his movements careful, contained. "I see you viewed what was on the drive. You know about the contents. I'm the one who gave it to Logan to bring to you." Evan met his father's gaze steadily. "After Ben died, Logan contacted me. He was going through his father's things and found all of it. He wanted to know if I knew about the recordings." "Did you?" "No. Not until Logan showed me." Evan's hands tightened on the armrests. "I knew we were lying about you being violent. I knew Mom was having an affair, but I didn't know. They were recording everything, planning to take your company. That doesn't explain why you're here now." Evan took a deep breath. "Mom's getting married again, to Victor Miller." The name landed like a stone. Harold Whitmore's former attorney, the man who had been positioned to facilitate the meeting with Walsh 3 years ago. "When?" "Next month. Small ceremony." Evan leaned forward. "Dad, they've been together for over 2 years. Miller was feeding information to Mom and Ben even before you filed for divorce. He was part of it from the beginning." Damon's mind rapidly recalibrated. Victor Miller had been Harold's attorney for decades. He had handled sensitive Whitmore family matters, including the foundation's legal work. If he had been involved from the start, Miller was the one. "Who suggested recording you?" Evan continued. "He told them what kind of evidence would be most damaging in a divorce proceeding. And now he's marrying your mother." Damon's voice was cold, convenient. "There's more." Evan reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded paper. "I found this in Miller's desk when I was dropping off some files for Mom. It's a power of attorney signed by Harold, giving Miller complete control over all remaining Whitmore assets. Dated 2 weeks ago." Graham examined the document. It appeared legitimate. Harold's familiar signature at the bottom, properly notarized. "Harold is dying," Evan said quietly. "Pancreatic cancer, final stages. And you're bringing this to me because?" "Because I think Miller orchestrated everything. He used Ben to get to Mom, used Mom to get to me, used all of us to try to get to you and your company. When that failed, he moved on to helping Harold manage what was left of the Whitmore fortune." "Why would Miller target me specifically?" Evan hesitated. "Remember that security contract you won 7 years ago? The one for Southeastern. Financial?" Graham nodded slowly. It had been one of his firm's first major corporate clients, a regional bank that had since grown into a financial powerhouse. Miller was representing another security firm that bid on that contract. Your winning cost his client millions and cost Miller his position at the law firm where he was partner. The pieces aligned with dispassionate clarity, a calculated revenge plot, not unlike Damon's own. Patient, far-reaching, using people as pawns. "You still haven't explained why you're bringing this to me," Graham said. Evan met his gaze directly. "Because I was wrong about everything. I chose the wrong side. Believed the wrong people. It took me 3 years and a lot of painful lessons to understand what you tried to teach me. That loyalty and truth matter, that actions have consequences. And now you want what? Forgiveness? A father-son reunion? No. Evan's voice was steady. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I want is to make sure Miller doesn't get away with using our family, what's left of it, as collateral damage in his vendetta against you. Graham studied his son, searching for deception and finding none. What exactly are you proposing? Miller doesn't know I found the power of attorney or that Logan contacted me. We have an opportunity to expose him before he marries Mom and gains control of Grandpa's estate. Damon's eyebrow raised. I'm not asking to be part of your life again, Evan said quietly. I'm asking you to help me protect what's left of my mother's future and to make sure the man who helped destroy our family doesn't profit from it. Graham stood and walked to the window, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The cold satisfaction he had felt upon winning his divorce had long since faded, leaving only an empty precision to his days. Here was an unexpected opportunity, not for reconciliation, but for a more complete justice than he had achieved. I'll need to verify everything you've told me, he said finally. Of course, Evan stood. Logan is willing to testify about what his father left behind, and I've been making copies of anything relevant I find at Miller's office that's potentially illegal. I learned from the best. A hint of the old Evan surfaced. Briefly, you taught me to be thorough. Graham turned. I'll have Jared contact you tomorrow. Share everything you have with him. After that, we'll decide how to proceed. As Evan reached the door, Graham added, This doesn't change anything between us. I know. Evan's smile was sad but resigned. Some bridges stay burned. Chapter 9, The Final Reckoning. The courtroom was smaller than the one where Graham had first exposed Marisane's lies years earlier. Judge Catherine Landry had been elevated to the federal bench, but her replacement, Judge Evelyn, had a similar reputation for intolerance of legal gamesmanship. Victor Miller sat beside his attorney, outwardly composed but with a tightness around his mouth that betrayed his tension. Across the aisle, Harold Whitmore hunched in a wheelchair, his once robust frame wasted by disease and treatment. Graham sat beside Miles Grant, his expression revealing nothing of the methodical preparation that had led to this moment. In the gallery behind them, Evan sat quietly, his presence unknown to his mother or Miller. The hearing had been convened on an emergency petition to invalidate the power of attorney Harold had granted to Miller, alleging undue influence and failure to disclose conflicts of interest. What might have been a routine civil matter had escalated when Damon's investigators uncovered evidence of financial irregularities in accounts Miller had already been managing for Harold. Your Honor, Miles began, we have evidence that Mr. Miller has been systematically positioning himself to take control of the Whitmore family assets while concealing significant conflicts of interest from his client, Mr. Whitmore. Miller's attorney, Tessa Wells, objected immediately. This is a transparent attempt by Mr. Holloway to harass my client due to his personal animus over Mr. Miller's relationship with Mr. Holloway's ex-wife. Judge Evelyn frowned. I'm well aware of the history between these parties, Miss Wells. Proceed. Mr. Grant methodically presented the evidence. Miller's prior representation of competitors to Damon's business, his early involvement in the divorce strategy, financial transfers from accounts he managed for Harold to offshore entities later linked to Martin Walsh. Your Honor, Miles continued, we have a witness who can speak directly to Mr. Miller's knowledge of and participation in a conspiracy to fraudulently obtain Mr. Holloway's business assets through divorce proceedings. Call your witness. Judge Evelyn directed the defense. Calls Logan Walsh. A murmur went through the courtroom as Logan walked to the witness stand. Miller's face drained of color. Logan testified about the materials his father had left behind. The recordings, the emails, the strategy sessions where Miller had directed both Walsh and Marissa on how to build a case against Graham. And why did your father preserve these materials? Miles asked. Insurance, Logan replied. He told me in his letter that he kept everything in case Miller ever tried to deny their arrangement. He didn't trust him. When Miles played selected recordings, Miller's voice was clearly audible discussing how to frame Graham. Marissa, sitting in the gallery, covered her face with her hands. Miller's defense crumbled as document after document established a pattern of deception and self-dealing. By the time Miles called his final witness, Evan Holloway, Miller's attorney was already negotiating with the court clerk to arrange bail for her client on the likely criminal charges to follow. Evan's testimony was brief but devastating. He described finding the power of attorney, his suspicions about Miller's motives in pursuing a relationship with Marissa, and his subsequent discovery of documents suggesting Miller had been manipulating Harold's medical care to hasten his decline. When Judge Evelyn finally rendered his decision, it was comprehensive. The power of attorney was invalidated. All assets under Miller's control were to be frozen pending criminal investigation. A restraining order was issued preventing Miller from contacting any member of the Whitmore family, including Marissa, outside the courthouse. Graham stood apart from the others, watching as Harold was helped into a medical transport van. Marissa, pale and shaken, spoke briefly with Evan before walking away alone. "Well played," Jared said, joining Graham. "Miller's finished. The DA is already talking about multiple felony counts. Make sure Harold gets proper medical care," Graham replied. "Use whatever resources necessary." Jared looked surprised. "I thought the Whitmores were still persona non grata. Harold was manipulated by Miller, same as the others." Damon's voice held no warmth, only precision. "Justice means addressing the actual source of the problem. And Evan, he came through for you." Graham watched his son speaking with Logan, Walsh across the plaza. He did what was right, finally. That evening, Graham returned to his empty house. A text message waited on his phone. "Thank you, Evan," he didn't respond. Some debts could never be repaid. Some bridges remained burned by choice, not circumstance. Trust, once broken, could not be restored, only replaced with a colder, more pragmatic understanding. Damon Holloway had built his life on principles of loyalty, honesty, and consequence. The events of the past 3 years had not changed those principles, only reinforced their importance. Those who had betrayed him had paid their price. Even Miller, the architect of so much destruction, would face justice. As for forgiveness, that was a luxury Graham had never promised himself or others. In its place stood something more lasting. The absolute certainty that actions had consequences, and that he would always ensure those consequences were paid in full. Standing at his window overlooking the city lights, Graham raised a glass to the empty room. The reckoning was complete, the ledger balanced, and if the victory tasted more bitter than sweet, well, that too was fitting. Some prices were worth paying. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel, click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you.